Yandere Simulator has become one of the most popular stealth horror games to come out in recent history. From garnering a very devoted fan base to receiving extensive coverage from content creators online, it's no doubt that the game has made an impact on the indie horror scene. However, that still begs the question, how did we get here? Let's rewind back to 2014. This is Yandere Dev. Hello Yandere Dev. He makes video games completely by himself. Anyway, Yandere Dev went on 4chan and pitched an idea for a game that goes like this. A schoolgirl stalks a boy, kills every girl that interacts with said boy, and attempts to win his heart. It got a lot of positive reactions, so Yandere Dev soon started development and released a prototype. It's cool that the game is being made, but how will we get updates? Don't worry, we thought about that. Yandere Dev created a WordPress blog, which is intended to post updates regarding Yandere Simulator's development. A lot of the game's core mechanics were implemented throughout 2014, such as the inventory, crawling, dragging bodies, sanity meter, laughing, panty shots, dismemberment, and much more. As a result, several builds were released throughout the year. Oh wait, what's this? People are starting to notice the game. Amazing! This is good as the game is slowly gaining an audience. Overall, 2014 was a very big year for Yandere Simulator. The year is now 2015. Quite a lot happened during this year. January saw the addition of Reputation, NPC interactions, and different game over screens. Sanity was also updated during this month. Now it's possible to lose in the game. Some of the highlights of February and March include the additions of Yandere Vision, Yandere Notifications, several new weapons, Punished Mode, and Photography. It's now April. A lot of new stuff was added and features got updated. Oh wait, Senpai can see us now.
What the hell is wrong with you? Get away from me!
No, wait.
That's not good. Kidnapping was also added to the game in April. That feature is pretty self-explanatory. This game is about a Yandere schoolgirl, right? So where are the teachers? Don't worry, Yandere Dev addressed that. Teachers and classrooms were added to the game in early May. Now the school feels much more like a school. Oh look, you can now fake a student's suicide, as well as eavesdrop on others and put notes in lockers. Skipping forward to June, this month started out with a bang. Ayano can now poison students using materials from the newly added chemistry lab. It would be pretty nice if the school had a fountain that we can look at. What do you know? A fountain was added to the school in the June 17th build. Drowning was also added in this update. Nothing notable happened in July, so we're gonna move on to August. Several things that were added during this month include the shower room, electrocution, Midori Gurin, Baruza Town, and a use for the dumpster.
Yandere Dev, Yandere Dev!
The school now has an atmosphere, which can change depending on what the player does. Do you ever feel like learning more about who a student is? With the addition of student info, now you can. Oh look, it's spooky month. Yandere-chan can now gossip. If done correctly, this can ruin the reputation of other students and make them targets for bullying. It's now possible to torture a kidnapped victim for 1, 4, 12, or 18 hours. November saw the seduction ability getting added to Yandere Simulator. It's now December. You can frame other students using gloves and a weapon that your rival touched. The guidance counselor was also implemented during this month. Overall, 2015 was a very eventful year for Yandere Simulator. The year is now 2016. Let's just say Yandere Dev was really active this year. Clubs got a huge overhaul in January, allowing the player to use them to their advantage. We can also dismember a student's body using a circular saw. How fun! This led to many more updates relating to corpses. Delinquents were added to Yandere Simulator in March, which adds a new obstacle to disposing of bodies and weapons using the incinerator. Club benefits were also implemented in the game. Not a lot happened in April apart from giggling being added. Do you think you can outrun students? Now you can't. June saw the ability to befriend your rival being added. With that, we can now use the bucket to kill our rival using dumbbells or gasoline to light them on fire. July saw a lot of routine changes and content updates, so we're gonna move on to August. In order to forgive your sins, go pray to the turtle found in the live music club room.
Do it!
The ability to kill teachers was also added in August. Yay! September saw the addition of matchmaking, where Yandere-chan can pair her rival with their suitor. This acts as a passive elimination method. As for October, the main highlight was the addition of a settings menu, specifically one that allows the player to adjust the game's graphics. Using this, the game will be able to run better. Mission mode was added to Yandere Simulator in November, giving players some new challenges in the game. Conditions for completing tasks in mission mode were implemented in December. Now the missions will be even more challenging. Overall, 2016 was a very productive year for Yandere Simulator. The year is now 2017. Make sure to not kill someone in front of 4 or more witnesses because they will now apprehend you. Also, February saw the addition of an update to the loading screen. If the school atmosphere is low enough, the loading screen will change. Skipping forward to May, Baruza Town was removed from Yandere Simulator. Will it return though? Stay tuned. In June, a pool was added to the school map. With this, a new elimination method was soon to come. Also, the player will now be notified when class is about to begin, as to help them not be late. In the same update, Yandere Simulator now has a completely original soundtrack. Skipping forward to July, there were a lot of content updates and bug fixes released. Some of the more notable ones include an adjustment being made to the teacher's routines, students reacting to the player carrying limbs, and Ayano being able to open doors while crouching. As for August, the ability to place buckets on top of doors was implemented, creating a new trap method for the player to use. Events that happen during lunchtime will happen at half of the normal speed. September was filled with additions, content updates, and bug fixes. If Senpai sees you aiming your phone at him, he'll think you're sus. The headmaster finally came to Academia in October. In that same month, the game was adjusted so that every class has at least 5 students. November was kind of mid, but still had some things happen. When the player stabs another person, the weapon will become stained with blood upon impact. Also, the nurse will now react to the player messing around with things they shouldn't. December was pretty eventful with tons of content additions, updates, and bug fixes. For example, an update made it so that the player has to be less than 1 meter away from another character to attack them. Along with this, if a mask is worn while committing murder in front of a security camera, the player will no longer get arrested. Finally, the student council was also added to the game in December. Overall, 2017 was a very eventful year for Yandere Simulator. The year is now 2018. January consisted of a lot of bug fixes and adjustments, although with a couple notable ones. The faculty room is now a trespass zone, meaning Yandere-chan can't enter the area without being seen by a staff member. Also, the player won't be punished for being late to class if the teacher isn't even in the room. In February, a new personality type, the phone addict, was added. Several reputation-related updates were released as well. For example, if a student has a reputation lower than -100, they'll be bullied so badly that they won't show up to school. Unrelated, but killing a student using a blunt object stealth attack will no longer show blood, as there isn't an open wound of any kind. Yandere-chan can now change their persona at any mirror in the school. In addition to this, the player can now mark a student using Yandere Vision, in case they need to find a specific student later. If the player eavesdrops on a conversation, a warning will pop up at the top of the screen. Related to this, if a student says Yandere-chan eavesdropping on a conversation, they will react negatively. Finally, InfoChan is able to send a student home through the player using her services. As for April, new delinquents were added to the game. In the same update, a combat minigame was implemented. Bullies will also no longer try to bully the delinquents. Why? The delinquents can defend themselves just fine. May saw the implementation of new voice lines for the delinquents. Some new personas and characters were added to Yandere Simulator in June. Students with the heroic persona will run to the source of a scream, instead of slowly walking to it. Some new songs were added to Yandere Simulator in July. The sports club was also added, which resulted in the addition of 5 new students to the game. In August, the Rainbow Girls and Rainbow Boys were removed. Well, except for Kokona, Riku, and Saki. If a club leader sees the player murder someone, they will not allow the player to join their respective club. As of September 2018, the player can now learn about a student's opinions by befriending them and asking them to walk around the school. Somewhat relating to this, students can no longer follow Yandere-chan into the bathroom or the locker room. October mainly dealt with a lot of updates relating to the guidance counselor, including her being fully added to Yandere Simulator. Nothing happened in November. As of December 2018, the player cannot perform the Light Music Club minigame while the police are coming to Academy. Cardboard boxes were added to the area around the incinerator, mainly as a way to prevent the player from easily sneaking corpses past the delinquents. Overall, 2018 was a pretty progressive year for Yandere Simulator. The year is now 2019. Right off the bat, a memorial service will now be held the day after the police identify a student's corpse. Also, when the player completes another student's task, their reputation will increase. In addition, the total number of poison types increased to 4. In the same month, the ability to frame basically anyone was added. This is done using a knife, gloves, and a cardboard box. However, the teacher cannot put their fingerprints on a weapon, as shown in an update released in March. Several corpse and blood related updates were also released during this month, mainly having to do with students and teachers. In the faculty room, an ID card can be found. The player can collect it to avoid detection by metal detectors. As of April 2019, the student council will send you to the guidance counselor for the same things that a teacher would get the player in trouble for. In the same month, it was made so that Senpai would remove the player's mask if it was used to commit a murder. When Ayano has a sanity level lower than 33%, she'll develop intrusive thoughts. This is shown through visions of her attacking Osana. Mei saw the return of the "look at a picture of Senpai to restore sanity" feature. June was pretty chill, with the most notable update being the addition of a cyberstock option to the player's bedroom PC. The main highlight for July was the game's clock being slowed down. This was done to give more time for Osana's in-game events to play out. August saw the addition of a part-time job that the player can now use. It allows the player to earn money outside of school, which is very beneficial. This month also saw a lot of delinquent-related updates, mainly dealing with befriending them through completing tasks and turning into one yourself. As of September 2019, the player can no longer kill someone if no spare clothing is available. Yandere-chan carrying a guitar will no longer be seen as suspicious if she is part of the Light Music Club. The amount of gasoline in jerry cans became infinite in October. Stealth attacks now create a small amount of noise, alerting students who are very close to the player. An update released in November made it so that tranquilizing someone using a syringe will leave blood on the syringe. An update in December made it so that vending machines could be sabotaged using a screwdriver. Items were also removed from the Senpai Shrine, as they are meant to be collected over a period of weeks. Overall, 2019 was a very good year for Yandere Simulator. The year is now 2020, a new decade for people to look forward to. Students can now be electrocuted in the bathrooms in addition to fountains. Also, a notification will now be shown if a student is distracted by a radio. As of February 2020, anyone that witnesses the player pickpocketing will alert the victim. Moving on to March, a new way to gain info points was added, which involves providing InfoChan with stolen phones. This was also the month that the pandemic completely took over, which gave Yandere Dev more time to work on Yandere Simulator. However, the most important addition was Snap Mode. Have you ever wanted to use a stink bomb in Yandere Simulator? Now you can! They can be used to make students run away from their current location. A new way to get a game over screen was added to Yandere Simulator in May of 2020. It involves murdering 50 or more students at Academy. The player can also trade panty shots with InfoChan to earn money. As an example, 10 panty shots are worth $100. Do you ever wish one of the student council members would get fired? Today's your lucky day. Well, sort of. This is currently only possible in mission mode, although this could change in the future. Also, long weapons are now noticed more easily by other students. This was done to balance out the pros and cons of both long and small weapons. If you're broke, a tutorial will pop up teaching the player how to make money. As of July 2020, other students will no longer see you as sus if you pick up a not sus object. August was a huge month for Yandere Simulator. Why? The official demo was released at the end of the month, as well as Osana finally being implemented into the game. Speaking of Osana, an update released in September made it so that she'll only off herself if her reputation is less than -150. Also, if the school atmosphere is below 50%, the game's title screen will be creepier and play a darker version of the title music. Finally, if Osana does off herself, Senpai will stay home from school for 1 day. However, that event will also impact the school's atmosphere in a negative way, and by that event, I mean Osana offing herself. Moving on to October, it is now guaranteed that Senpai will reject Osana if all 5 of their interactions were sabotaged. Do you ever feel like faking a reaction to something? With Yandere Vision, now it's possible to do so. The fake a reaction feature was added to Yandere Vision during this month. Again, November was filled with nothing. December, however, was pretty eventful. A third method for getting rid of corpses was added, which involves using VAD acid from the Science Club. Weapons and uniforms can also be disposed of using this method. Also, a new way to earn info points was added in December of 2020, which is by completing a bounty. Overall, 2020 was a very big year for Yandere Simulator. The year is now 2021. Lots of updates and additions were made to Yandere Simulator. For example, as of January 2021, it is no longer necessary to increase your strength stat to level 1 in order to carry corpses. Instead, it now determines how quickly you pick up a corpse. Also, the bullies are now scared of Raibaru. Why? It's because she'd easily destroy them in a fight. Due to this, they'll only bully Osana if Raibaru is not present. Moving on to February, a new method was added for disposing of corpses. This involves the newly added sewer that can be found at school. A pool closed sign was also added to the game during this month, which will cause the sports club and bullies to change their routines when placed. Finally, the player can now read books at the library to pass the time. March was no different, with some new updates being released and new content being added. For everyone that complained Raibaru was too overpowered, Yandere Dev addressed that. What I mean is, Raibaru got nerfed pretty hard. For example, the player can now eliminate Raibaru through gossiping since her reputation is now half of Osana's. March left and April took its place. The box of garbage bags and roll of tarp was moved to the home ec room during this month. Another thing that was added was the ability to purchase stink bombs from InfoChan. Finally, a manhole cover tool was added to the faculty room, which can be used to open the manhole that leads to the sewer. Nothing happened in May, so let's move on to June. The player can now bring one item from home to use for whatever purpose. After sabotaging a rival's interaction with Senpai, a progress bar will appear at the end of the day. Finally, a crafting system was also added to the game, which the player can use to make certain items such as stink bombs, bang snaps, and lockpicks. July and August mainly dealt with content relating to the 10 Rivals update. September mainly had a bunch of teasers relating to the said update. Here are a few of them for anyone that's curious. October rolled around and a major update was released. When I say major, I mean huge. What was the update? It was none other than 1980s mode. I would explain its mechanics, but I'm pretty lazy. Yandere Dev also made an entire video about 1980s mode, so go watch that after finishing this video. Anyway, October also saw a change in the timeline that the game takes place in. It changed from the current year to 2020X. November saw a lot of bug fixing builds being released, which ended up fixing a lot of bugs that the game had. Also, a cutscene involving the Yakuza was added. If the player pays the Yakuza to kidnap a student, a cutscene will play showing this event the following day. Finally, a feature was added so that the player can skip to a specific week in 1980s mode. December was not too different, with some significant bugs being fixed during this month. However, some new things were also added to Yandere Simulator in December of 2021. For example, if the player poisons Raibaru first, then they can attack her without facing a counterattack. Also, if a student was kidnapped during any point of the week, they will refuse to follow the player after returning to school. Overall, 2021 was a huge year for Yandere Simulator. The year is now 2022. January was pretty chill, not gonna lie. If the player manages to get a sedative, lethal poison, or lockpick, they'll be able to bring it to school the following day. Also, if there is bloody clothing being washed with a washing machine, the game will display a notification saying so. Hey guys, it's February! Look at this totally legit picture of Yandere Dev's real life car. Just kidding, it's not actually his. Anyway, a lot of the builds released during this month have dealt with bug fixes and routine changes. Some examples include the following shown on screen. Moving on to March, some pretty cool additions were made to Yandere Simulator. They are a water cooler trap and a car battery. The former can be used to wet students that hit a tripwire attached to the said cooler, and the latter can be thrown in front of the player to electrocute other students. Pretty cool, right? Speaking of the car battery, a build released at the end of March made it so that carrying the car battery around is considered suspicious. It's now April. A Bunsen burner was added to the game. This gives the player a new way to light students on fire when the candle cannot be accessed. Also, if the player holds a candle near a student soaked in gasoline, other students will see this as a murder attempt. May, like every other month during development, consisted of a lot of bug fixes. However, a big update involving the ventilation system was also released during this month. As of May 2022, the player can now use the ventilation system to send a big stench to any room of their choice. June had quite a bit of content added to the game. Some of the highlights include getting kicked out of clubs, crafting items using chemistry, and kidnapping up to 10 students and keeping them in your basement. July saw a bunch of previews for upcoming content get released, which is nice. That being said though, a lot of improvements and bug fixes were also added to Yandere Simulator. To be honest, August wasn't that different. As for September though, a couple important things were added. For example, a box of aluminum foil sheets were added to the home ec room. This can be used to pad weapons and make them undetectable to metal detectors. Moving on to October, the player now has to feed their prisoners or else they'll die. A minimap was also added to Yandere Simulator as a potential feature. November of 2022 was pretty chill though. YouTuber Brian Stuff YT turned 18 this month, which is a huge milestone for him. More importantly, however, a new weapon was added. What is this weapon? It's none other than a scythe. I don't know what else to say about it. Some restrictions on gossiping were also implemented. December saw a lot of bug fixes, not surprising, as well as a lot of improvements. Here are some of them. Yandere Dev also addressed his disappearance from YouTube during this month. Overall, 2022 was a very vigorous year for Yandere Simulator. The year is now 2023. Yandere Dev teased a new character model style and went in depth about it. This new style is meant to resemble the one used in the game's official artwork. Apart from that, some other updates include the health of the player's prisoners worsening if corpses are present, less blood being spilled upon death if the biology stat is increased, and security cameras no longer seeing the player as suspicious if they are wearing a painter's smock. January left and February took its place. The biggest highlight of this month was the release of a tutorial for 2020 X mode. It helps guide the player through the basic mechanics of the game in a fun and unique way. Along with this, new renders were added for 1980s mode. They are meant to visualize the monologues that Ryoba gives in between weeks. Lastly, updated visuals were added to the Senpai Mitsumai cutscene. This makes the said cutscene much more fluid and pleasing to look at. Now we're here. Special thanks to Yandere Dev for fact-checking the information provided in this video. Make sure to like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video. As Yandere Dev would say,
thank you for following the development of Yandere Simulator.